And welcome back. You're watching Business Unusual on Newsroom Africa, Channel 405, and we continue with our top business stories. We've been looking at Eskom announcing yesterday a loss of 20.7 billion rands before the break. So I asked the question, biggest amount that they've spent, they say, was on IPPs. But not only that, they've got that whole issue of 40 billion rands in uncollected debt. How do they navigate that?
Well, I mean, the uncollected debt, as I said, I mean, a lot of it is going to be a function of how the economy performs. And I think the policymakers, while naturally they're worried about where do we cut, the real thing has got to be how do we get the economy performing? How do we get the capital expenditure, which has been announced for many years, actually physically happening, because that's where your construction companies are going to make money, that's where you're going to do maintenance by municipalities, but that's where they'll also put in infrastructure to be able to collect and monitor the spending that they're happening. So there's a bit of balance that has to happen. On the IPPs, I mean, again, I think in South Africa, in a couple of times, we've made decisions, I'm not sure we're always to our own short-term economic interests. I mean, there are certain things which theoretically make sense, but you got to look at your own strengths. I'm not sure, even in the discussion of energy mix, that we needed to rush as quickly as we did into solar, where we actually didn't produce any of the key elements. So you import a lot of stuff, which opens you up for forex risk, but you're also externalizing a lot of the money. When we have a commodity that's coal, which is getting cleaner over years, have we really exhausted that technology? Because, I mean, we still need base load, so we're going to live with coal for a bit. So I think the cost at the time was because the world hadn't gotten into the efficiencies it's now at on how to produce cleaner energy. And for me, the question is, why did we rush?
Yeah, these are some of the questions that I suppose, hopefully, Jabu Mabuza will have to answer in the next 3 months while he's at the helm as the group CEO and executive chair. But the other story that I want us to get to is the owners of Makro and Game Massmart seeing a drop in share price by 16%. They're reporting that they will be looking at a loss of about 550 million for this June 2019 period. What do you attribute that loss to?
So again, for me, I mean, it's the general trend. You know, what GDP figures always are is a rearview mirror. It shows us what has already happened. We've had other retailers before, Woolworths, that suffered some losses. They seem to be on a turn again. But the reality is that consumers are now not as confident about the future anymore, and as a result, naturally, they will hold back on some spending. So if you, let's say we hear now that there may be a possibility of a cut in salaries of public servants, a public servant now naturally says, I was supposed to buy that toy for my child, maybe I must wait and see what's going to happen. So that kind of uncertainty then leads people to holding back, leads to the economy contracting. So retail is going to naturally be one of those sectors that's affected.
I don't know. However, you look at what's happening with ShopRite. They seem to be doing better than expected.
Well, again, I mean, I'm not an expert on retail, but at the face of it, ShopRite is at the lower end. So if you want to be cutting your spending, you look at Woolworths, probably is the most expensive. And then you look at which one between Pick n Pay and ShopRite is cheaper. So if you can find something cheaper at ShopRite, that's where you'll go. So you then get to have, in an economy that's going under strain, certain goods and services that benefit because they become a substitute for what people do when things are normal. So, you know, your Mr. Price, your ShopRites, your Peps may now start benefiting out of a perception of an economy that's going to contract, where people are looking for cheaper and value.
If you are an investor in Massmart, what should you be thinking right now?
So again, I keep avoiding making such direct questions, answering such direct questions, being in an exchange of what people should do, because it would seem as if I know something I don't know. I mean, they're not listed with us. But I think what we've been seeing over years in the markets, which is a headache for us who want to encourage liquidity, is that institutions start holding cash when they are not sure. And then, you know, where they invest, they would then go to stocks they think are defensive. Industries where, like, okay, maybe people are going to continue eating. Maybe people are going to continue wearing clothes, but maybe they will change their behavior and buy things that are cheaper, so we'll go to those that are cheap. So you're then starting a little bit of a shift in the market onto those things people believe are going to withstand the storm, which is not good because you don't get then out of a recession by people not putting in money. Somebody's got to drive a bit of liquidity. We're not talking recklessness, but whether it's government or through a fiscal or monetary policy or the private sector, somebody's got to step in. And the private sector, naturally, because it chases a yield, they're not going to take certain risks where they're not sure they're going to get the yield. So we do need government to take that first step.
Yeah. How's the market responding to all this? Is this a yay response, a nay response, looking at both what's happening with Massmart, but also the kind of positives that are coming out of ShopRite?
I think, if you holding, people's savings, whether in the form of pensions or monies from insurers, and you are entrusted with investing them, you got to be responsible with what you do. So a lot of what you see as reaction by institutional investors is perfectly logical, because you don't want to take risks which are going to burn people's pensions, because you will be personally liable and accountable for that. So I think that is normal. What, for me, needs to be done is to start looking at alternatives. We all talk about small businesses. How much money is physically going to small businesses? I'm not talking funny structures of you put money in a private equity, the private equity takes positions in what appears to be small companies, but these are big. I mean, entities that are really employing individuals, are changing the economy, and are going to be corporates of the future. How much money is going into them? Because you need to get those companies to retain the jobs they have. Yes. As people are losing jobs from big companies, they must find a place. I mean, MultiChoice has now said they are retrenching. Where are those people going to come? Some of them may come to Newsroom Africa. Some of them may come with products to Newsroom Africa. Is there somebody who is going to finance them to take that space? Is there somebody who's going to invest in growing Newsroom Africa to be a bigger channel that absorbs some of those skills in a readjusting economy? So for me, that's the real thing on what the private sector has got to do, is to be real about where the growth opportunities are in South Africa and outside of South Africa, and put money into it. But also government has got to see through its promises. If it says we're going to spend money on capital expenditure and it's X billions, let's see it happening, because that's where, again, the wheels start turning. So for me, we see a lot of negativity, but we've got to start hearing the policymakers coming out a little bit stronger on what they are doing to kickstart the economy.
And they do, Saki. Well, what can they do? Because, I mean, I know coming out of the NEC meeting, they're saying the president making an indication that it cannot be business as usual. He would like, I suppose, to change our economic policies. Yeah. Where does he change to? Are we looking at China, what they're doing there? Maybe putting some other stringent measures in place? One child household policy situation. I mean, what is it that they can pull on right now?
So again, I mean, for me, I don't think there's a lot more that still needs to be done on policy. I think every option that's conceivable in the world has been talked about. And again, I mean, I don't think also countries get out of problems out of talking about policy, and it's about decisive action. I mean, we've seen Europeans, what they've done with their monetary policy. We've seen Americans, what they did with their monetary policy. Yes, it got to a point where people were worried about the debt, but they were clear that they're not going to get out of a recession without throwing liquidity into the market. So they took a view and rode the storm. So now they're at a point where they've got to live with consequences of that. And the reality is that there's consequences on everything. But if you look at, I mean, some of these key government entities, which are supposed to also be driving capital expenditure, and I'm not talking about new announcement or new initiatives, things that have been announced already, can they happen? Because if those happen, then you're going to start, again, seeing people, at least if they're not creating jobs, sustaining them. But if you have a project with a municipality and it is not moving, or you have a project with Eskom and it is not moving, then you're going to start retrenching people. Yeah. So I think a bit of it, either than focusing on big and nice sounding ideas, just solve the basic problems. When people are saying we're not getting paid, solve those problems. Right. When tenders take 18 months to be awarded, cut that to 3 to 6 months. So those are the things you can do within your power and within the money you've already committed without looking for additional funds.
But certainly there's something that other stakeholders have got to come on board and do as well, because the jobs problem is not just a government problem, it's not just private sector problem, it's a South African problem. Even Labour has got to come on board here at some point.
Yeah, you know, I had a friend who used to say, even in a democracy, there's a leader. So the point is, you know, all of us must do something, but somebody's got to lead. And that person, and we have people we've appointed into positions of leadership, and mostly those are politicians, and then they employ civil servants who've got to do certain things. In the private sector, I mean, we, if anything, for me, I think we don't hold them as much accountable, because, I mean, most of these businesses survive because our pensions are invested in them, or we contribute insurance payments every month, or we bank with them. But we don't keep them accountable on, are you guys innovative? I mean, are banks extending credit to mid-cap companies that are going to be the future of South Africa, or are they recycling money on the already existing corporates? Yes, there's space to fund that. And here I'm not even talking risk banks can't take. I mean, we accept banks are not going to do venture capital or private equity, but we've seen some of them, you know, setting up their own enterprise supply development funds. But we've got to have that conversation on whether the private sector is actually also contributing in kickstarting the economy. I mean, we've seen in the US people talking about wealth tax. We've seen the billionaires committing that they will donate a certain portion of their wealth to charity. And those charities, whether they're in medication, whether they're in education, whether they're in technology, are doing things, again, that are getting the economy going. So here we do need business as well to see themselves as citizens, and it's somebody else's problem. All I'm going to do is to cut costs.
So before I let you go, I want you to quickly talk to me about what's happening at Old Mutual. How's the share price responding? We saw, of course, Peter Moyo yesterday winning that court case, and the court saying he must be reinstated. Early morning, Old Mutual writing a note to him saying, no, we're appealing, don't show up for work. If he went to work anyway, and he says, hey, I'm here. How's the market responding to that?
So I would rather, again, I mean, because it's a listed company, I would rather not speak about what I think, but my only hope, probably not just about them, but in an economy the way it is that you don't want to create more uncertainty in the economy. It's a big entity. You would rather problems like this are resolved before they get out of hand, because I think irrespective of what the courts decide, you attract attention to your entity that nobody knows where it's going to be. Yeah. Good thing is that, you know, we have a mature legal system. Everybody has confidence in it that the right things are going to be done. So when people feel aggrieved, whether it's the employer or the employee, they have a platform. So that's a good thing, because it starts setting the tone on how business is done in South Africa. So I think litigation is normal, but I think in an environment of negativity, you would rather have certain things resolved. And we now talk about where Old Mutual is investing than talking about, you know, its legal issues.
Those are your top stories. Saki Zamqara, Director of Business Development at ZAX. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
All right, after the break, we get into it then. Job Seekers Wednesday. Do stay with us.